San Antonio, welcome to All Things San Antonio podcast with your favorite host, realtor, investor, fundraiser, Brad Burns and
Ken Carter, co-host. And we're here with a very special episode, one of our exclusive, not really that exclusive, but we have one exclusive to our channel. One of the 2025 San Antonio mayoral candidates, Gina Ortiz Jones. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you
for having me.
Oh, absolutely. We're honored. Like I said, we kind of start all of them off with the origin story, military transfer, born and raised. How did you come to San Antonio? Are you a native all the way through and through, or?
Was not born here. Moved here when my mom remarried.
Okay.
So I moved here when I was 10 years old. But part of not just kind of where I grew up here in San Antonio, but as I think about myself as a person, and frankly as a leader, my story really starts over 40 years ago when my mom came to this country.
Okay.
Right? Not when we came to San Antonio. She graduated from the #1 university in the Philippines, but came here as a domestic helper. She wanted a shot at the American dream, and so she knew she came here, even in that capacity, the sky's the limit. So, she raised me and my sister by herself. She reminded us every day that we were very lucky, not smart. We were lucky to have been born here, and we'd have to give back. It's why I was honored to serve. It's why my sister serves in the Navy. And so as core to kind of where I grew up, Adams Hill Elementary School, Pease Middle School, John Jay High School is also, for me, fundamentally understanding that I am here only because my mom had the courage to chase her American dream.
That's awesome. We have and just recently we had, I don't know if you know, I've heard of Mare Monte, the Italian restaurant. Guy named what's his
Prince.
I know his last name. Black Job. I think he's from Kosovo though. And he talks on that about how in 1991 when the military came in and liberated them and made his way to the United States and worked his butt off, working in New York and everything, and came to San Antonio and created a different kind of a restaurant, and he just putting in effort, and that's what it takes is effort. You go in there and do work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also can't ever forget that, again, I grew up, I went to John Jay High School, right? And then ultimately, 25 years-ish later, I served as the Undersecretary of the Air Force. That is not a story that is common, right? I, again, am very thankful for the ways in which San Antonio and our country invested in me, allowed me to grow up healthy, get an education, serve our country, right? And I feel that uniquely, this being Military City, USA, but also because all of my service, in uniform, out of uniform, I've seen the importance of American leadership, right? When America is not at the forefront, right, reminding people of our values, but also showing people our values, more importantly, the world is less safe. But I have also seen through all of my service that true national security starts at home. It starts with smart, healthy kids, right? It starts with making sure communities understand and have elected leaders that understand that they are accountable to the communities that they serve. And it certainly starts with greater transparency around how major investments in our community are being made so that they best serve the city, the entire city, right? Not just a handful of folks. So that's what this race is about for me, right? Making sure that we have leaders in place, that we're moving our city forward in, again, a way that best serves as many people as possible. I most recently served as the Undersecretary of the Air Force, so the #2 over the Air Force and the Space Force. And guiding principle for me every single day were those last 6 words of that national security strategy, which is there is no time to waste. Right? There's no time to waste. And if there's no time to waste, there's no talent to waste.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is why I have put out my own plan, GinaOrtizJones.com. Hey, these are my 6 priority areas. These are also the 14 areas, I think, the 14 things that we need to do in the first 100 days to make sure that we are moving our city forward. Even if we had a different president, we would still have the reality that over half the kids in our community are not reading at level. They don't have the math skills at level. We'd still have the reality, y'all are in the housing industry, 95,000 working families are housing insecure. That's on top of the 67,000 folks that are on that wait list for Opportunity Home, right? So we've got challenges. There's lots of data that shows what this means today, what this will mean in the future if they're not addressed. We've got the talent here. We've got the resources. Now we need the leadership. I look forward to bringing that to make sure that we, again, are moving our city forward. We don't have any time to waste. So a real sense of urgency with how we address these things, I think, is important.
The sense of urgency, I completely agree with. The world is changing so fast. And we have to make sure that we set our cities up for success
right.
and everything. Because at the end of the day, whatever happens from a global, from a federal, even on a statewide, like really like your local community, like this is where the most impact is what happens with your local community.
Yeah.
What happens in Austin and what happens in DC, like it affects us, but it doesn't affect us the way that like we can affect our neighbor.
Well, I agree with you. I think there are, but in these particular times, given what's happening in DC and in Austin, we really have to make sure we have a good idea of where we want to go, because some of the things that we want to focus on, that funding is going away, right? I mean, everything from, the impacts on the Department of Education. I mean, that's important given the number of Title I schools in our community, right? The kids with special needs in our community. I'm a veteran. I get my own care at the VA, either at Addie Murphy or the clinic off 151. And so we're already experiencing longer wait times just to get an appointment, right? And in our community, with 16% of the community either a veteran or active duty, when those services are decreased on base or at the VA, that means they send us out into the community. So if I'm taking an appointment off the books in the community, that means that's less appointments for everybody else. So this trickles down, even if you're not directly a VA member, for example, getting your health care through the VA. Yeah. I think it's also important, though, that we have the data to address these issues. I think as a leader, the three most important questions you can ask: why not, and where's the data, right? Where's the data? Lots of folks with, hey, we need to do this, so we need to do that. And it's like, okay, how?
Yeah.
How do you want to do that, right? And that's why on my website, I have that 100-day. These are the things we need to tackle in the first 100 days.
What are your top three things? What are those like when you if you and within the first 100 days?
Yeah.
Like if you don't do anything else, those three are the ones that you really want to see done.
I think we're having, as you all are looking at your housing developments, there's a real opportunity with what's going on downtown with this Project Marvel, right?
We're very interested in that.
Yeah, and I think this could do wonders for our community.
Yeah.
I think it could do a lot of things. We don't have the details to really assess it and understand who's paying, by the way, right?
100%.
That's the real question.
Who's paying?
And really, part of that to the extent of it, because I think that there's two camps. Because I would say that I'm in favor of like the arena and like the Spurs stuff that's going on, because I think that really puts us in a good spot. I personally don't see the need for the baseball side of it, and I know that they're separate, like technically, but they're so tied together. Like that's my concern. It's like which way we go with that kind of stuff.
Well, let me come back to that piece of it. But I was just going to say, this Project Marvel, the potentially $3 billion-ish is what they're talking about. This would look like. And again, there's, to your point, there's a different number of different projects within that, so it's unclear what exactly it'll look like ultimately. But what I think is important is we need much more information about what it's going to be, who's going to pay for what, right? And what is the timeline? Because it's not, do I want something or don't I want something? It's like, hey, across all the things that we want to invest in as a city, where is the highest rate of return, right? Where is the greatest bang for the buck, if you will? And so we got to look at it in that context. So I am very concerned when, that planning process has been, and this is widely reported on by San Antonio Express News, by Texas Public Radio. I'm very concerned. We should all be concerned that those negotiations, those initial conversations, have gone on under the veil of non-disclosure agreements. And again, it's because the San Antonio Express News asked the questions. And so, again, I've worked in the intelligence community. I know there's a way in which you can protect information to do the work, but then you got to make sure the people who need to make decisions are well informed. And in this case, those are voters, right? Those are voters. I am concerned, and the city council folks have said, well, I didn't sign an NDA. I didn't say you signed an NDA. I said, as the reports have also shown, it's been the city staff. And so this is important because for such a significant investment to have been made for the elected officials who represent the people to not have been brought into that conversation means it's really important that we rebalance how people understand to whom they're accountable to. So one of the things I would do is we got to revisit that NDA policy. For those discussions to have been gone on for as long as they did, given the price tag, without public input, is really concerning. Why is that? Because we got to make sure we got to get a good deal. We publicly financed the Alamo Dome. We were told we were going to get an NFL team. I mean, the Brahmas are cool and all, but that's not an NFL team, right? We publicly financed the AT&T Center.
We're supposed to get the Vikings specifically. Red McCombs said we're going to get the Vikings.
Well, you remember. We publicly financed the AT&T Center, and you go listen to those.
And
folks
there was a
on the east
lot
side.
of promises that never happened there. A lot of promises.
On the nose. On top of the fact, I just had a coffee with Judge Nelson, and he then ended up sharing this on a podcast that he was on right after that coffee, where he said, because he negotiated that deal, he said that agreement was that we were supposed to get 20% of that revenue each year as a result of publicly financing that. He said, ask me how much we got over 20 years.
By nothing.
0. Because an accountant can make it look like you didn't make any money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't make any money, 20% of 0 is 0.
Cooking the books.
Well, and look, and I just think it's really important the math ain't mathin'. We've got to make sure we have a good deal, right? The history on some of these things is not great. So let's make sure we're cutting folks in. So the very first thing to your question in the 100 days, I think we really got to look at what is that NDA policy currently, because what it does is it doesn't breed confidence in voters if all that has happened, they haven't been brought into it, because then it raises the question, well, what else are y'all hiding from us?
There's an awakening going on in America in general of just show us the reality of what's going on. People all don't mind helping people, but we want to know that we're helping people and we're getting a bang for our buck.
Yeah.
And if anything, it's we don't know where our money's being spent.
Well, and maybe we'll get a good deal. Maybe you're right. But
let us celebrate it.
That's exactly right.
We like to party. We can have some food trucks.
Right.
Best deal in government ever. We'll make a celebration.
Show us the numbers. Show us how it's a good deal for the city, not for a handful of folks, but for the whole city. Because what I say earlier, over half the kids in the community are not reading at level, right? So, there are things that we could invest in that may be higher rate of return.
Well, and I on the education side, there are. So my children's mom, Jennifer, she is in Alma Heights School. She teaches and she works in the Excel
program. In the heart.
She works in the Excel program where they do a lot of credit recovery and things like that. And those programs are going away. There's funding going away. These programs are going away because there's not money for these types of programs. And there's two sides to that. Yeah. There's the kids I don't know his last name. I think it's Mike Taylor. They call him Big Mike from Alma Heights. They went to UT, football player. They want him to graduate early so they can go up there and start paying him his millions of dollars to play football already, which is great. But there's also those that just they don't do well in the school environment for whatever reason. They may have from social to like problem children to just don't socially fit in. And they need to get out of. They go to these programs and not having having the money for it, it's going away. Yeah. It's crazy.
Well, let me say this.
I don't know if I explained it well. But.
No. I get the point. Which I'm a proud product of public education. And I went to John Jay High School. I didn't go to Science Academy. Science Academy wasn't there when I was there as a freshman. It came as a junior. But people always assume I went to that school. It's no. I went to regular John Jay High School. And thank goodness I did. I had somebody that really, my mom is such a hard worker. And she was having a hard time getting her certification. And so what she was doing is she would actually drive to Laredo Monday mornings because they had a real teacher shortage. They were taking folks. And so she would go down there Monday mornings. My sister and I were middle school at the time at Pease. And so my mom would then come back Friday afternoons. But she was working down there. She did that for about a year or two, again, just to have that experience so then that she could be competitive for some of the teaching jobs here. And so as a result of that, right, unfortunately not getting a lot of attention at home, I was acting out at school. And fast forward the story, I'll just say acting up to the tune of Gina had to go to court. and I was on probation for 6 months. Had to pay a fine.
I like it. I like it.
Had to pay a fine.
Feeling a connection there, Brad.
Yeah.
Had to pay a fine, and I just remember, I remember being in that court. And I'm like, I don't want it, because I was making straight A's, but I was making straight U's. Again, just being a knucklehead because I wasn't getting attention at home and I was acting out at school. But thank God I got to John Jay. Buck Holtz, still my mentor, but he was my student council advisor. Never took a class under him, but he was my student council advisor, and he took me under his wing because he saw that I liked the leadership development stuff. I was in student council all 4 years. Ended up being the student council president. Also ended up being the number one person in our junior ROTC program, which was the largest in the country at the time. But I liked giving back. I liked serving, and I liked leading. And only because of him, though, right? Him kind of steering me at the right point. So I say all that because our public teachers, we don't pay them enough. And these programs that you're right are so critical because there are so many folks in our community that are struggling, right? And you see it in kids acting up or kids not going to school, etc. Due to COVID, we still are having a challenge with kids not going to school at the level that not even just the test scores, but like they're not going to school, right? It's a real challenge. That we as a community, we are going to deal with those. And I think, military, we talk about Military City USA. I think it's really important, though, having served at the Pentagon at the level that I did, I know the recruiting crisis that we're dealing with as a country. And so counties and communities like San Antonio really matter because the large percentage of young people that serve in the military, they only come from like 30 counties. Right? Because the number one indicator of whether somebody will serve in the military is if they know somebody who has served. And so obviously in a community like ours where we have a lot of veterans, we disproportionately send people to serve. Yeah. And the challenge then when we are not producing academically prepared, healthy enough kids is that it's a national security issue because we contribute so much to that. My also concern though is that if they're not healthy enough or academically prepared enough to serve, they might not be healthy enough or academically prepared enough for our economy. Right, and they stay here. So we've got to be thinking about this, I think, in the economic terms, which is why when you go back to that 100-day plan, you'll see on there one of the things I want to do in that first 100 days is understand how much talent are we leaving on the table by not making sure every kid in our community can go to pre-K for SA. Because we know where the highest rate of return is, right? It's on making sure we invest in those kids as to the left as possible. To your point, are they having, is it a learning disability issue? Is it something else? And how far left we can address that means that they're not making knucklehead decisions in school and doing well, which then and doing poorly, which then ultimately affects their trajectory in life. Because I would argue we wouldn't need so much ready to work program if we had more pre-K for SA. And you pay at the front or you pay at the end, right?
I love that. Like, I think when my daughter, she turned 4, we reached out to the school and we're like, hey, the pre-K 4 y'all have. They were like, hey, well, your income.
Right.
So we're like, cool. Like, I wrote a check for her to be able to go there. And then they called us like 2 weeks before school started. I'm like, hey, we're not going to like take her after all.
So many spots.
Yeah, and I was like, well, how do I get a refund? And they're like, well, like, show us your bank account, like where the check came out of and yada, yada. I was like, that was 4 months ago. I was like, I'm not going to go back and look like put it on a kid's lunch or do whatever y'all could do with it. And so like
Forced
that's
altruism.
that's how we got into going to private school because she started there in pre-K 4 and she loved it. So we just haven't moved her. So our son goes there now and our next son's going to go there when he gets old enough. And yeah, I think it's important to try to get every kid on there because just because somebody's income might be higher than other people's, like, they could pay for it, but there's a lot of people that won't pay for it. And there's a big difference in kids, because I see it personally. There's a difference in kids that have went to daycare, have went to pre-K 4.
That's right.
They get into early elementary school, and there's a huge difference on what those kids know, how they act, their classroom behavior, all of that.
That's an investment.
It is.
It's an investment.
Huge.
Right?
And it's great for the kids. Like, at the end of the day, like, if you take it, like, I always like looking like what was like 10,000 years ago. And 10,000 years ago, the kids were all in a group together at 3 years old playing, right? Even if they're not even like learning, like they're going to learn, but like just having that social environment and being around the rest of your community I think is just as important at that age.
I think that's more. I think the social aspect of is probably more important than the actual lesson plan.
Yeah, and the social piece on top of kids with different backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds. You see lots of literature on this that shows one of the best things you can do for folks that are from disadvantaged communities is to integrate them with kids that are from a different socioeconomic background. Because you're right. I mean, the better they're able to kind of navigate and build those social relationships is the better.
And the problem is it's forced based on like or because of the way we have and this is like it goes into the charter thing which is kind of a whole touchy thing because like on one side I think it's a great idea but also I think as people that are already paying for private education are now going to take that money out of the public school system completely and start and put it to where they're already spending money.
You're talking about the voucher thing.
With the vouchers, but the way our school systems are now by districts. Alamo Heights is actually interesting. My kids have gone there for a long time. And from a socioeconomic stance, it is one of the most diverse in the city because it does have the very wealthy and the older neighborhoods and stuff. But it also has that area that's over there off 281. It's got some that's over behind 410 that also feed into it. And they also have a lot of hotels where you have people that are renting by the month that are there in Alamo Heights. So it's very diverse. But then you go to somewhere like Reagan. and they're all the same. You go to Harlandale, they're not getting that interaction with, and then you go to sporting events, and then you have it's a us against a them kind of thing, and it's like we need more. So that's where I see it's like I don't know the answer to that challenge, but I think that we've kind of designed a system that's created that challenge.
That's created division.
This is a really interesting point. So San Antonio has the highest level of poverty of any of the top 25 largest cities. We're also very economically segregated. To your point,
exactly. Yeah.
Right. Previously, it used to be the number one indicator of somebody's success was the color of their skin. Now, the number one indicator is the income of their parents. Right. And sometimes, obviously, there's a key overlap between those two things. And so I think as much as we can do at the city level to level the playing field is why I think it's important that we're focused on, for example, what is the bill for pre-K for SA? Let's look at it. Let's have a conversation about it, right? Two, how much now in y'all's area, what is that number for? We know what the strategic housing implementation plan is targeted for, but if we wanted to increase the availability of affordable housing and housing that is affordable, right? All the whole mix
housing
of that.
Affordability.
Housing affordability.
Affordable housing is different. Like that's the thing.
Well, it's all the same. I mean, it's not all the same, but it's under the same umbrella.
Right.
Because I hear folks, hey, I can't find a place to rent in a place I want to live. Right, that's one thing. Not everybody wants to be able to have to drive out to Medina County to afford a home, right? But also go talk to folks in Mankey Park. Go talk to them about that house that's been in their family for decades, and the property tax that is pricing them out of that community, right? But also go talk to those folks. For example, even at Soap Factory, right? Those apartments downtown that are unfortunately getting kicked out of there. But housing affordability in particular is really, really is important when we think about generating wealth in our community. I will say, again, I feel a particular way about this issue in particular, just because my mom was working throughout our life, was working several jobs to take care of us, and there was a time where we rented a room and in a home. We shared a queen bed. My mom, me, my sister, and my grandmother. Now, thankfully, none of us were too big, right? But I was probably 5 or 6. I remember that distinctly. But thankful that we had we're secure in where we lived and had a roof over our head. But just the security of a home and like what that means for a kid, for somebody trying to make ends meet is really really important.
Sure.
On my 100-day plan, I want to look at if we can expedite the approval, the review, and potentially the approval of a certain kind of project, right? And it's just one of them. It's not the end all be all. But look, those projects that are 70 to 100% affordable, that co-locate childcare, and that help us meet our transit-oriented objectives.
What do you mean by co-locate childcare?
There's a childcare facility right on that premises as part of the project.
Okay, so you're talking big apartment kind of communities.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But if it's got a percentage of these homes that are, affordable, it co-locates that, and it helps us meet our transit-oriented objectives, right? How can we move faster on those? People are telling us what they need. We also, I want to tell the developers saying, hey, these are the things that we need. These are the things that we're going to try to expedite in terms of, permitting and zoning and those types of things. So folks know it's very clear where we're focused. We just don't have nearly enough housing. In particular, I also think it's important that we help folks that are so important to moving our city forward every day that they also can buy a home, right? So Councilman for District 2, Jalen, he's got a program where he wants to help teachers buy a home. I think that's great. I want to help nurses. I want to help childcare workers, firefighters, police. And by the way, police here in San Antonio. You want to buy a home. You want to buy a home in Shirts. That's on you. But if you want to buy something here in San Antonio, I think we should help those folks that again are those critical to our everyday. And then one more that maybe is
that's interesting,
specific to you all. And again, in the housing, the realtor piece. We know that there is not enough homes at a certain price point in our community, and that's important because those $250K and below homes, those are those starter homes, right? That's how people buy that first home. They build equity, right? And we know in our community where we have such high rates of poverty, we got to put people on the right track as fast as possible, and it starts with that kind of purchase. So one of the reasons that supply is smaller, not just in San Antonio, but throughout the country, is private equity. These private equity firms, not based in San Antonio, they've come in, and you've seen it a lot in the Southwest. They've come in, they buy up these homes. They did it in 2008. They certainly did it during COVID. They buy up these homes, and then they make them, now they're rentals, right? So now, if you have a higher percentage of a high enough percentage of the supply, though, that means the rent may be higher than it should be.
They were
right?
half the purchases in 2020 and 21 were like BlackRock. The BlackRock, it's BlackRock in them.
Well, you know.
Of course.
So I mean, what other municipalities have done, though, understanding like, hey, we want people to buy a home.
Mm-hmm.
The rents are too high. They shouldn't be that high. We need people building equity. So what other communities have done is they've introduced pro-competitive policies. And in some places, that looks like a cap. It's like, hey, company X and your subsidiaries, you can't buy more than this. Right? Because it's not just about who owns the home, but it's ultimately about all the positive benefits in our community of somebody being able to purchase a home and build that equity and transfer that wealth to their own family. So those are again, that's all on my website, right? Let's understand, hey, private equity, what percentage do you own in our community? And now city council, let's have a conversation about what we think right looks like if we're not happy with that number.
Well,
I think I got a couple of opinions on it. Like,
Yeah.
as far as like the affordability factor, like the city of San Antonio has a great program called the HIP program, where they contribute towards down payment and closing costs and things like that to help low income families out. And most agents or lenders don't like to use that program because it's so strenuous to get through. So like we negotiate repairs on behalf of our clients all the time. So one of the things they have is you have to send the inspection report into a city inspector, and the city inspector decides what things that they want to get fixed. And it might be something that's, yes, code things are important. It might be something that was code last year, and then this year is a different thing. And now they want somebody to go back and fix that or change this and do those things. So I think not necessarily being more lenient upon those things, but a little bit more flexibility on it, like especially if it's not a huge safety issue.
we put like barriers into the processes that like are repetitive. Like for example, like recently the city has changed to where you have to, like, general contractors have to take a test and have their own like licensing or whatever within the city, which is on face value sounds great, right? But the reality of it is like there's anytime you are doing construction, you're getting a permit. You file with the city with a permit. The city sends an inspector over there, and you're getting a permit with a licensed plumber or whatever. So like, there's already the safety, from what I see, like the safety side and everything, and then it becomes another kind of like barrier for people that need to get it, because like we work people who like they have a third grade reading level, right? So now you're taking them through a government standardized test to get licensed, and like the English may not be their first language. And so it's reducing the number of people that have that little certification, right? And so that only, whenever you reduce the supply, it's going to increase the cost, which means the cost of building is going to go up as well.
Yeah.
We have the same thing in, similarly, is like we're making people in District 2 specifically, in all of these, like that's where I have a couple properties, have to get replatted. And so now you've got a $20,000 bill on top of it, that's because you have to hire an engineering company that may take 6 months to a year. So it delays the money that you may be borrowing. So it's just, we always talk about affordable housing and housing affordability, but so much the government like puts all these little things in place that all they do is increase the cost to it.
So, I mean, that's a perfect example. I would want to look at, as part of that, in that 100 days, is where in this process can we go faster, right? What is that? I'm not the expert on it, but I know we need to do this faster. So, tell me how fast we can go, and then we can have a discussion about what we're comfortable, what we're not comfortable with. On the importance of the construction workforce, though, we have one of the highest rates of workplace injuries, unfortunately, in the construction industry, right? And that is something that I'm also very cognizant of, because we have a lot of folks that are uninsured. We have a lot of folks that are undocumented. And so, we got to go faster. We got to keep costs down, but we got to treat people with dignity and respect. There's a lot of, unfortunately, wage theft in the construction industry, unfortunately, folks being misclassified. So, let's go faster. Let's build more. Let's make sure we're paying people what they've earned, and let's make sure that we're reducing, workplace injuries as best we can, right? So I think there's a number of things that we've got to accomplish when we are thinking about the housing supply. I'm also thinking about it, though, in the context of downtown, right? I just sat down yesterday with the head of Centro, Trish DeBerry, and talked about, how they're thinking about housing downtown, which is not something that we really talk a lot about, right? Right now, there's only about 12,500 households there. They want to get it to 25, but actually want to go higher than that. Right? And so what does the new build look like there? It can't all be luxury. It can't all be deeply affordable. What's the right mix? And those are the kinds of conversations we should be having. But then also, like, how do we hit those, right? At the same time, we're also thinking about the development on the south side. That is, I don't know if y'all been there recently, but that is exploding. And
down by the school.
Yeah, by Brooks and what. I mean, all of that will only go faster if we want it to, right? But also making sure that we've got things like public transit and the infrastructure. I mean, the infrastructure north-south is good, but now, as you're talking to those folks down there, it needs to be improved east-west, right? As we bring those additional manufacturing jobs, which are good jobs. Good jobs down there.
Yeah, I grew up in that area and thinking about east-west.
Where'd you go to high school?
I was supposed to go to Sam Houston, but I went to Jubilee.
Oh, okay.
So that was back when charter schools were first starting up.
I was going to say, you don't hear that yet, of your age, right?
Yeah.
That's a new thing.
We consider him like a homeschool kid. I'm just no offense to homeschool.
But yeah, so I went there and thinking about it, you get some north-south, but really the only bus lines that kind of go east-west from where we were at is I think it's the 550 that goes down Military and goes all the way back around. And I think it's 515 goes down South Cross. And that's kind of the main...
It'd be interesting because you have... UTSA is doing so much downtown, especially with their cyber stuff and AI stuff and everything. And that should drive affordable housing. Because
we can't hope is not a strategy.
It's you got... Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I trust that it will. But because they have to be able to afford to live there. I mean, they're students and everything. And with that growth and then with what's going on against city base, that's not so far from each other.
It doesn't have to be. You're right.
That whole section right there, we've got some stuff that we're developing there. That should just be that next growth area.
Well, the goal, when you look at the central plan, is they want 10,000 units down there for students. I mean, that's great. And as you know, that'll fundamentally change kind of how that area operates, frankly, with 10,000 young people down there
a lot
that
of
are
coffee
students.
shops.
That's right, lots of coffee shops.
Coffee shops and bars.
Yeah, right. But
San Antonio.
Well, that's right. But then we got to think about mobility, right? We've got to think about certainly the public safety piece of this as well, right? I mean, now that's a whole different conversation.
Should we bring Waymo in?
Well,
we got rid of the horses, so now we've got to bring in the Waymo.
Are the horses officially gone now?
It's being phased out. Yeah, it's in the process of being phased out.
Positive movement.
I think I think we can be creative. Yeah. I think we've got, but that's the point. Is we're at that design phase now, right? Given that Project Marvel, what that ultimately looks like is changing some of these plans. But when they were saying the plan currently, the central plan, they want 75% of the businesses downtown, storefront businesses, to be small businesses. That doesn't just happen, right? We got to think intentionally about, okay, one, that rent is really high. What percentage? If we wanted to, based on what it is right now, what could it be? Right now, it's not even 40%, right?
So here's a crazy idea.
I was just going to say, these are great goals, but now it's okay, now what is the plan to get us there, right?
I apologize. I'm really bad about interrupting.
No. It's a good conversation.
So we've asked a lot of people, including we just had Andrew Weissman, who he graduated from CIA in Hyde Park. Yeah. So we have the CIA here. Yeah. And nobody can tell us any CIA graduates that have a restaurant in San Antonio. So what if
San Antonio CIA graduates?
Right. So no San Antonio, the one that graduate from our CIA here locally. There's ones that graduate from New York and open. But our own CIA San Antonio graduates have not opened something here. So what if there was some sort of incentive, keep the talent? We always talk about even tech talent, but I think that in the future, food talent is really going to be important for cities with technology and all this other stuff. Fast food's going to go the way of robots and things, and to have a person that's doing a crafted meal, it's going to be a destination. We've already got the Michelin stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity for us. I mean, our food is way better than Houston's and Dallas, anyways.
For sure.
And Austin. Just to be clear.
To be clear. Well, and I think we've got to be thinking about that in the context of, for example, the Riverwalk, right? I mean, cool and all, Dick's Last Resort.
Got a lot of stale restaurants there.
Rainbow,
no offense.
I mean, Rainforest. I mean, okay, but like we can have some more authentic things down there, and so those are the types of things I think we got to be real focused on. But I don't think they just happen, right? I think we've got to say this is the kind of development that we want to see. We want to open up the aperture for the different types of businesses, and if they say I can't do it for X, Y, or Z reason, then I think it's on city leadership and in concert with the county to say, okay, well, how do we get there? Right?
And I was having a conversation with someone who's quoting Graham Weston from Weston Urban, that the thing right now currently downtown San Antonio, 95% of the money leaves San Antonio. Because most of the restaurants that you mentioned, they're national chains. They're such. All the hotels, other than the Drury, which is a San Antonio local San Antonio, none of them are local San Antonio, except what you have like the Pearl and stuff like that growing. So that's the kind of growth that we don't have. Like we need to keep that money. The more you can keep your money local, obviously it's like going to benefit everybody.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
How do you think we can get more local businesses to open up downtown? I think Project Marvel will help get people down there, because locals don't go downtown for the most part.
Well,
I do. I do. You may not. I love downtown.
To be fair, you're not from here. No, but
Damn.
Literally, I moved here the year he was born.
Yeah. He's probably been here longer than me, but I think ultimately, like for the most part, like I've never heard a local be like, "Let's go to the Riverwalk." And
The Riverwalk's different than downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to like Brick or something, Stella and stuff.
So it was recommended. We had a meeting with the government folks. That's funny. He got you. The government affairs folks at VIA. And one of the guys there recommended, it's a short little, it's not a documentary, it's a short little video. It's called Fourth Place on YouTube. And what they talk about is specifically the percentage of parking downtown, surface level parking.
I saw that video.
Oh, you did? Yeah. So we've got the highest percentage of parking of any of the top 10 cities that's surface level. And for me, what they said, and it was a really interesting kind of way to describe it, they're like, this, to me, it shows that San Antonio was kind of built in mind as a place where tourists go, have a good time, and then leave, park their cars, and then leave, right? Versus, to your point, how can we make this an area where locals want to come as well? And not only want to, and I think they want to, but can afford it. Right? And so I think these are the kinds of conversations that we should be having and make sure that we're well investing in those things. But you also got to put that stuff in the contract.
100%.
That's why I'm like, where's the contract?
Yeah.
What is the deal that the rest of the community gets? Because the to your point about how do we help the small businesses get down there, one of the main impediment is the rent down there. It's high, right? So if we say that we want 75%, what is a program that we can help get there, right? If they say they can't get there themselves. So I think that's a key part of it, a good mix of stuff, right? Whether it be retail or businesses, services, et cetera. I think it's also important that in other downtowns, you have a much higher percentage of people that live downtown, right? And we talked about that earlier. And so again, the housing piece, one of the key metrics that they brought up, I thought it was really interesting, was they want all basic services within 2 miles of they call it Central Business District. They want 2 miles. And I was like, 2 miles is good. I just don't want 2 miles to be an hour trip on a bus, right? Otherwise, that's not convenient, right? Especially if the parking is already going to be difficult. Driving is going to be difficult. So I think there's lots of opportunities to be, we also want to make sure it's not a food desert if people live there, right? So these are all the types of things that I think we have to have thoughtful conversations about. And it's not just, which company wants to come in from out of town and set up shop, but really what do we want that to look like? Because we're doing it right now, right now.
The number that I've always heard is like a first square block, it needs 2,500 residents to be viable, to where you can then have a little grocery store and you can have this and you can have, like if you have little blocks, if you have that many people is where it's the kind of magic number.
Well, I think it's important to always know kind of what the industry standard is, but I think there's also the point of, okay, what is going to work here though?
For sure,
right?
absolutely.
We don't want to set ourselves up to run a marathon and we're just like getting off the couch, right?
It's got to be, even with our food scene, we've kind of like, if you think back 10 years ago to like today, we've kind of had this gradual growth. And I think that San Antonio is doing the same thing with our urban core and stuff. Like we're about to do it. Like we're just.
It's exciting.
There's a lot of people that want to do it. I feel like
it's exciting. I think there's lots. So I mean, a couple things. So one, sprawl is not growth. Right.
Yes,
let's be
100%.
Clear about that. I think also we have got to be thinking about. We've got some unique opportunities. You mentioned UTSA downtown. and the merger of UT Health Science Center and UTSA. I think that is huge.
Yeah.
I think it's also important, though, that we are flagging the ways in which, and this is important for a leader, right? We want to grow in a way that makes sense, as fast as possible, as benefits as many folks as possible. So I think we also need a leader out of our city that is talking about, hey, DC or Austin, when you put these things in place, this is what it means for us. Mm-hmm. And I say that because obviously, 1 in 10 kids in the country lives in Texas, 1 in 10. So what happens here is not insignificant. More people live in San Antonio than in 10 states, right? So we have a significant say in how well a large percentage of our community of our state is served. And so what's happening at UT Health Science Center and UTSA, that's great. All the growth in our cities, that's great. Concerning, though, when doctors say, hey, I don't want to go to Texas because I'm not going to be able to practice healthcare the way that I thought I would when I went through training, right, based on your laws. That's important. We just saw, we were talking earlier about kind of that disproportionate, the inequities in our community. Since 2022, when the abortion bans, with the effect of the abortion bans, we have seen for the first time in 15 years an increase in teenage pregnancy. First time in 15 years we've seen that, and that's because of that policy. And who's driving that? Young Latinas, right? Those same communities where I said, hey, folks are not meeting reading level, no surprise that where we're seeing these same healthcare issues, our reproductive issues, are in those same communities. We've seen an increase in rate in sepsis, right, where people are intentionally, unfortunately, being made sick because they're not getting healthcare when they need it. And I say all that because it's not just about the businesses and the growth. It's about quality of life here in San Antonio, right? It's about making sure you can go see a doctor, get the health care that you need. And I think we have to think about all of those things as importantly, because it all contributes to our strength, our economic strength as a community.
I agree. So again, we appreciate you coming on. I hope
this is great.
I hope you enjoy. Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
So now's the tough question.
Yeah.
So this is where the controversies come out. Breakfast tacos, go-to spot.
Well, it depends. So there's a Jalisco on. It's always
good
on
answer.
It's always, yeah. Exactly.
Agree.
Yeah.
So you got good taste in tacos.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's on, what is that, Petranco and Dugas. Lots of breakfast tacos there with Mom. And it's funny that we'll go there at different hours because I like the breakfast tacos. I will be honest, I'm a potato and egg on flour. But I like the green sauce. Actually, I like a mix of the green and the red sauce.
You just had that this morning, no?
Exact taco. But it was at local coffee, and it was brought in from Chilaquil.
Oh, okay.
Which is cool.
But if it's dinner time, I love a tripa taco. I do.
Wow.
Yeah, like not too crispy because then it's burnt, right, and not too soft because then it's too chewy. But a nice tripa taco, corn, right, some guac, and some cilantro. I'm good.
There you go. Do you have a barbacoa place?
No, I do not have a barbacoa place. I'll have it every now and then. But honestly, if I'm having a breakfast taco, I'm having probably 2 bacon and egg.
The follow up to that is hamburgers. What's your favorite? What's your kind of fast foodie, but also not if you just your favorite spot?
Fast foodie. I'm a Whataburger Jr. kind of gal. I know. Otherwise, the other one's just too big. Like, you're like, I can't relate. But anyways.
Hey, Whataburger Jr.'s hit. Yeah.
Whataburger Jr., but then I do upgrade on the fries and on the drink.
It's just free upgrade on fries.
It's not free upgrade.
It used to be.
No.
You get
no, man, inflation.
Yeah.
Like that's not happening.
You're lucky you're not paying for the ketchup.
I'm talking about fries. I'm not talking about eggs.
Oh right. Oh, that's tough, isn't it? I mean, yeah. And then you said a fancy burger. Let me think of it. You said is that
or just a burger, like if you're like other than like.
That's not fast food.
So because the right answer is Mr. Juicy. Like
the right answer. It's not a trick question, but the right answer.
We tell everybody like Mr. I don't know if you haven't Mr. Juicy.
I haven't been there.
Oh man,
where is it?
So he's got 2 locations. I would recommend the one on Northwest Military, so you can. Per Mr. Weiss, when he wants you to eat it there.
It's more seating area, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's in the old Whataburger. That's right there, Northwest Military and Lock Hill Summit. Now it's a big green building.
Yeah.
And the fries are so crisp. And his thing is like he even won't close the bag when they give you so it won't mess up the fries.
Okay.
And his kids, they have the other one off Hildebrand, and he lives over in the Alta Vista, Monte Vista area.
Okay.
And he gets mad at his kids for bringing it home. He goes, "Eat it there. That's better there." Like it's really so it's
an experience.
It's and burgers are. They got a wet sauce that's got Dijon and shallot. Like it's like next level. It's the best.
Yeah.
That's our Mr. Juicy commercial.
That's our we stalked him for a year to get on. Like we were like his biggest cult fans. Like when he came in, like afterwards, like people were giving him hugs. Like Miss Edge. Like,
so you recommend a cheeseburger?
Yeah, I always get
cheeseburger. Is it a double? Is it a single?
They do it all.
Okay.
And it's inexpensive, cheaper than going to like if you get the single, it's cheaper than going to Whataburger.
Really?
Actually,
it's like $9 for the meal.
Oh.
And they do a chicken sandwich that's real good. That they'll put like buffalo sauce.
Yep.
But it's like 3 chicken pairs, and it's like this big.
Mr.
People
Juicy's
literally get it in the last. That he goes, there's a couple that come in and they get an extra bun grilled, so they can make 2 sandwiches. Like he's just, yeah, it's the.
I'll try it.
It's the bomb.
I like it. Good.
There we go.
Good.
So
he gave you the answer.
I gave you the answer.
Yeah.
So you haven't had it yet, though. So what is your?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm partial to smash burgers.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let me see. When's the last time I had a
See, that's why I like Mr. Juicy because it's a nice.
Or what's your go-to restaurant here in San Antonio? When you say I'm gonna go out to dinner, where are you going?
It depends on what I'm in the mood for. I like La Fonda. I go to La Fonda a lot. And yeah, exactly. Well, they've got good fish tacos too.
Yeah.
And I also like, so they have the 3 salsas. I like the habanero. I like, you don't have, like, not a lot of places have habanero salsa, right? And the margaritas always hit.
Yep.
Worm salt. Do you get the worm salt there? So this is their spicy salt. It's not a tahini. So they do tahini salt, but then they do a worm salt, which is it's more of like a chipotle. That's what I don't know if they would use that.
It's a little smokier.
It's a little smokier.
I'm not
exactly.
a smokier kind of.
Oh.
Even my brisket in barbecue, I don't like it over smoked. I don't like a lot of smoke in it. I like it cooked right, but it's like.
Huh. Yeah. No, but they do. I like La Fonda.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
Sweet.
Thank you, everybody. GinaOrtizJones.com. Is that
GinaOrtizJones.com.
There we go.
Go check out the website. If
Follow
you've got
Instagram.
feedback, info@GinaOrtizJones.com. But look, I think we have to have a leader who has a plan. Is it the perfect plan? Is it going to answer everything? No. But these folks that are coming up with like word salad, I was like, come on now, right? And so I really look forward to bringing my service and leadership to service to my hometown, right? This is a critical period. And I think it's important that we have somebody dedicated to moving our city forward in as many ways as possible.
And I love that the beginning is like, let's get transparency.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Because the more you know, the better you can proceed. You got to have information.
Transparency builds accountability, and
Absolutely.
accountability builds trust, right?
Like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Catch us on the next episode.